And Srila Sridhar Maharaj talks about that, right? He says, our solace is that Krishna is a thief, right? Krishna is a thief. And no matter, there's that, I think it's Search Shri Krishna, right? There's that very nice section where he says, no matter how high the walls that we have erected, one day Krishna, he will just break them all down. And then he also says, right, he's a thief. He doesn't need any invitation. He doesn't need an invitation. So we can find some comfort in that. Although in so many ways we may be averse to him, he will capture us. He will capture us. And that is our hope and our comfort. So I do have that question. And the question was about, there's that section in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, right, where Krishna talks about the unsuccessful yogi. Perhaps you could riff on what happens to the unsuccessful yogi in one of your talks. Right. So in chapter 6, right, there's that section where Krishna is talking about controlling the mind, right? And there's that section where he's saying, right, the mind is actually, we can have a look at it. Those verses are very nice to revisit, where he's saying the mind can be our best friend or our worst enemy. But those, I would like to look at those Sanskrit verses. They're very nice. So it's chapter 6. Yeah, so it's dhyana yoga, right? This is like a development upon jnana yoga, the yoga of knowledge. And then from the yoga of knowledge comes the yoga of meditation. So yeah, chapter 6, Jnana Yoga, the path of meditation. And Krishna is speaking in the beginning about some specific yoga and meditation practices with some detail. And then, here we are. These verses are very nice, and our gurus will quote these sometimes. I'm looking at verse 5 and 6 here. Udared atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayat atmaiva hyapmano bandor atmaiva ripur atmanaha. One must elevate himself by the mind, not degrade himself by the mind. For the mind is sometimes the friend of the living being, and in another situation, that very mind is his enemy. So the mind can be your bandhu, your best friend, but it can also be, what is the word for enemy? Ripu. Also can be your ripu, be your enemy. This is the nature of the mind. So it is a matter of training the mind, right? And then for one who has conquered the mind, his mind is his friend. For one unable to control the mind, his mind works against him like an enemy. And as a side note, right, we can also mention here that this is the real purpose of these yoga practices, the asanas and breath to control the mind, right? And to prepare the mind for being fixed in deep meditation, and ultimately samadhi, full absorption upon the Lord. So there's some details how one should sit and so on, their posture. And this is one I remember sometimes too, which is helpful for everyone. Yoga cannot be practiced by one who overeats, undereats, oversleeps, or undersleeps. The middle path. This is one understanding of what yoga is, right? That's a nice verse too. Where is it? Yuktahara vihadasya. This is the next verse. In proper measure, right? In a regulated way, in proper, they work and they rest, they eat, they don't eat in proper measure. We can also say this is yukta vairagya from another perspective, right? And this is one of our Vaishnava principles, right? Especially emphasized by Saraswati Thakur, that we're not afraid of the environment, right? We don't reject the environment or enjoyment, but we don't exploit the environment either. But we take what we need, not more, not less. This is yukta vairagya. This is also yoga. That word yukta and yoga, they have the same root actually. So Krishna is speaking about this, right? The importance of controlling the mind and becoming fixed upon the Lord. There's this other very nice verse, 22. I've heard Srila Sridhar sing this verse actually very beautifully. Yam labdva shaparam labam manyate nadikam tata yasmin stitona dukena gurunapi vishalyate. Let's see, they've put this, it's a group of verses that I've put together in translation. But they will consider yam labdva shapram, they will consider that there's nothing higher to be gained. Like one, sorry, this is referring to one who's like perfected their state of mind control, entered into this deep state of meditation, and as a result of that, in that deep mood of, not just mood, but state of meditation, they have some darshan of the Lord. And so it says that one who, one who's attained such a state, this will be their nature. They will feel there's nothing greater than this. And they will never be disturbed even by the worst suffering. Yam love, they will consider there's no greater gain. Nothing can be greater than this. And nothing can disturb them, no matter how terrible it is. This line is also very nice. Yoga must be practiced with perseverance and a heart that is never discouraged. Yoga must be practiced with perseverance and a heart that is never discouraged. So the wavering and unsteady mind should be brought back from whatever mundane objects it pursues and be held within the self alone. His consciousness united with the infinite, the master of yoga, sees the universal spirituality. He sees the supreme soul within all beings and all beings within the supreme. This is also a very beautiful one. Yo mam pashyati sarvacha sarvam cha mai pashyati. For one who sees me in everything and everything in me, I am never lost to him and he is never lost to me. So beautiful. So Krishna is speaking about this, right? Controlling the mind, becoming fixed upon the supreme. And Arjuna is listening to all of this. And then he asks this question, which really is for all of us. Arjuna said, O Madhusudan, because of the fickle nature of the mind, I cannot conceive how one can maintain the equilibrium in yoga that you have described. O Krishna, the mind is fickle, turbulent, obstinate, and very powerful. I consider controlling it to be more difficult than controlling the wind. So this is really nice, actually. There's, like we feel understood, when we hear this, we feel heard. Like, okay, thank you. They all understand how hard this is, right? This isn't easy. Krishna is speaking all these very high ideals and principles but oh, here's Robert coming in now. Krishna is speaking in this very eloquent way on these very elevated practices, but we're here in human land, right? Well, actually, that's kind of hard, Krishna. It's kind of hard. Welcome, Robert. We're discussing your topic. So Arjuna gives us all some relief there. Oh, thanks, Arjuna. Thanks for speaking up for us. Like this isn't easy. This isn't easy. It's easy to talk about. Nice to hear. Nice to talk about. But to actually practice this, Arjuna's like, come on, Krishna, let's get real. This isn't easy. So Arjuna is speaking for us. He's representing each and every one of us, each and every person who has ever attempted spiritual practice and found it challenging, which is 100% of any sincere practitioner, right? So what's the solution, right? Should we all just give up? Should we all just go kill ourselves and give up, and just accept we're eternal failures? We can't live up to that standard. Is that the answer? Like, tell me, Krishna, what's the solution here? And so Krishna starts with acknowledging that, yes, undoubtedly the mind is fickle and extremely difficult to control. But he says it is possible by practice and by detachment. And then Arjuna, then he responds saying, what about someone who has tried? They failed. Let's read this. What is the destination of a person who, due to his faith in the scriptures, engages in yoga practice, but lacking perseverance, proper practice, and abnegation, is distracted by mundane inclinations and fails to succeed in yoga practice? Again, right? Sounds familiar. And then Krishna makes his point, Arjuna makes his point, like this person, it's like, and this is something again so relevant, right? And Srila Sridhar Maharaj talks about this too, that for persons who take up Krishna consciousness, they'll get to that point where like their faith has become strong enough that they know this is all there is, right? And they don't really have taste in material enjoyment anymore, or at least the way that they used to. But at the same time, they're not really successful in their spiritual practice. They're not tasting the joy of spiritual realization. They're not tasting what to speak of the joy of feeling their connection with Krishna. So it's kind of like you're just ruined, right? You can't get the pleasure on the material side. You can try, but it's not the same anymore. You know too much, right? You took the blue pill or the red pill or whichever pill it is. And so like you just can't, you're just like sucking juice from chewed up sugar cane. Or one very graphic description in Bhagavatam is kind of gross. Is sucking mango juice from like an old man's beard. Like there's just nothing there. It's a desperate attempt for enjoyment that isn't really real. So you're not really quite getting it on that side, but then also you're not getting it on the spiritual side. You're also struggling with that. You're still dealing with your body, your mind, your senses. Of course, this isn't the whole picture, right? I'm representing the dark moments that we all face. Of course, there are the positive moments too. But this is the feeling that a sincere practitioner will have, right, in dark moments. So Arjuna, then this is his next question, right? Isn't this person just lost, like a scattered cloud, right? They've fallen from both paths, right? They've fallen from the path of karma, right? Action in the world. They've also fallen from the path of dhyan, from the path of meditation, from the spiritual path. So what happens to that person? What's the hope for them? What's the action plan for them? And so then Krishna speaks in a very encouraging, reassuring way, right? And he explains that this soul, they will, he says that they'll have some chance to live out their material desires. And then in their next birth, he says, they'll be situated in an environment that is conducive to their progress, right? They'll be born within a family that will support their spiritual development, and they'll pick up where they left off, right? And this also brings us back to this other verse in Gita, and we just went through it last week in our Gita meeting last Friday. In this verse, Nehabi kramo nashosti pradyavayo navidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya chayate. I've forgotten the last one. Chayate mahato bayat, right? That whatever you attain on the path of devotion, you will never lose it. It will always stay with you. Because it is of the eternal plane, anything that you gain in connection with eternity, it will have an eternal result. That was one way Srila Govinda Maharaj explained it very concisely. Because it is of an eternal nature, it has an eternal result, right? It's not that, it's not like in this world, like we may learn something and then we forget it, right? Like I don't remember anything pretty much from what I learned in school, to be honest. All those hours and years of learning geography, mathematics, biology, chemistry, and so on. I don't remember anything. Maybe 1%. Only of like the English, which was the subject I liked the most. Like, I don't remember anything. So that's the nature of material gain, right? Same thing with money, right? You can gain some money, you can lose it. It's gone, right? But this is something else, because this is not of this flickering temporary world. This is coming from a substantial plane, a plane of based on eternity. So whatever you acquire there, it is always with you. You will not lose it, right? So that is something very reassuring, very encouraging. And so there may be some period, right, where you're, as Arjuna is describing here, and Krishna is acknowledging it, right? There may be some period when you go off track for some time. Could be lifetimes, right? You go off track for whatever reason, some current of karma, something can come and take you away, but you will come back eventually. It is just a matter of time. And then there's this one line of Krishna's that I like very much, and I don't have my own copy right here. I have it underlined in my copy, where Krishna says that despite themselves, right? Here it is. It's verse 44. Despite himself. I just love that. It's like, because we're obstacles to our own self, right? But despite our own selves, despite himself, he is carried by the yoga practice of his previous life. In his search, he surpasses the fruitive rituals of the Vedas. So that wealth is still within him, right? That treasure is within him. And when the environment is favorable, again, the progress will pick up, Like we see seeds, right? If seeds are stored properly, they can keep hundreds, even thousands of years. I've heard of some cases like that, archaeologists finding seeds that they could sprout and grow, So the same thing, it's kept in some cold storage, you could say, on hold, our progress, our whatever we have acquired, it's on hold, on pause. And when again the environment is favorable, just like the seeds, if they're planted in the proper soil, exposed to the right environment, sunlight, so on, rain, then those seeds will sprout. It doesn't matter if they've been sitting dormant for thousands of years, they can again sprout. So this is the same with our bhakti lata bij, right? The seed of devotion, as Mahaprabhu refers to it with his analogy. So we can all take hope with that, we can all take hope with that. Krishna will not forget us, we may forget Krishna, but Krishna will not forget us. We can take some hope in that. And I'm also reminded of that there's this vow of Lord Ramachandra. And if Suvasini was here, she could, how does it go again? Rata, he uses that word rata. Evam rata begins like Evam rata No, that's another verse I'm thinking of, but Rata is in there. I can't remember. It's Srila Maharaj includes it in Prapana Jivanamrita, but it's a vow spoken by Lord Ramachandra, recorded in the Ramayana, where he's saying that this is my solemn vow and promise for all time, that if any soul once turns to me and says, I am yours, then Ramachandra says, then I will accept them for all time. I will accept them. And I've heard that once one devotee asked Srila Gurudev, like, is that about that verse in particular? Is that verse like only referring to like really great devotees? And Gurudev said that is for everyone. That is for everyone. So there is so much encouragement, there is so much hope. If we can have one moment of clarity, that's what it's saying, right? If we can have one moment of clarity, we can have 2 seconds of clarity, realizing our position, having some awareness of what is our actual position, what is our relationship with the Lord, and reach out for that shelter. If we can have a few seconds of that kind of clarity and pray to the Lord with that kind of clarity, humility, dependency, that he will remember. That will be remembered in the record book. That will be remembered. So there is so much encouragement there. Ramananda Prabhu, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I have one question. See, like Lord says in the end, you serve dharman pratyaja mamekam sharanam vraja. So we surrender. So how it's related to us? We are protected. We are under guidance. I was listening Param Guru Maharaj. He said we should have faith in our guardians. Because we have guardians. We are not orphans.
Sorry, Prabhu, I'm not understanding the question.
I said, since we are all initiated, see, Robert is not. So how it relates to us?
Wait, I think I missed a few words there. That we are what? You're referring to Sarvadharmam Prityaja.
Yeah.
And what
Mahaprabhu
about
even threw that out. See? I said, Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he threw out even Sarv Dharman Pratyaja.
Yeah.
He said just, yeah, he said just Stane Stita Shurti Gatam. Yeah, he said just, I don't know whole verse, but he said just listen, yeah, Sharavanam Kirtanam, yeah.
But sorry, what was your question, Prabhu?
I was asking how this relate to us as initiated, because there is difference. Those are initiated and those are not initiated.
You're saying surrender? I
Yeah, that's what we learning. See how to surrender. Yeah, like a bhakti note.
wait, you're saying because we're already initiated?
Yeah.
I mean, surrender's more than that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
what does it really mean to take initiation, Srila Gurudev, he's referred to that verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Diksha Kale Bhakta Kore Atma Samarpam, right? That what is Diksha? Diksha means when the soul fully surrenders themselves to Krishna. That is what real surrender means. And then Divyam Jnanam Yatodadya. This is another line in the scripture which Gurudev and Param Guru Maharaj would quote. It is the imparting of divine knowledge. That is the root meaning of Diksha. Divyam Gyan, Divya Gyan, the giving of divine knowledge. So, sometimes Srila Gurudev would say, we're using this word devotee, but are we really devotees? That's something we heard Srila Gurudev say a few times, We've taken initiation, but have we really taken initiation? Have we really surrendered? Have we really embraced this? What does it mean to take initiation? It's not just a matter of getting a new name and chanting on beads and having a formal connection, So we're starting, right? We're in the beginner class, but we are in the process of learning to surrender, attempting to surrender. So, and you're mentioning, right, this other verse, right? Because in Mahaprabhu's discussion in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Ramananda Rai, he rejects that verse, as you mentioned, that sarvadharmam prityaja. And the main point there is that that verse is, in many ways, Bhagavad Gita is giving like first level of instruction. And those, like, the details are elaborated upon more in Srimad Bhagavatam. Right. And so in that verse, sarvadharmam prityaja, Krishna is saying something a little general, actually. He says to give up everything and come to me. But what does that really look like? How do you do that? And when Krishna says, come to me, like, what does that mean? You surrender to the picture of Krishna on your wall, right? And so the verse that Mahaprabhu accepted is you're referring to Gyane Prayasham Udapasya Namanta Eva, right? And the point is that sadhu sangha, right? The importance of the connection with the Vaishnava, that is not mentioned in Sarvadharmam Prityaja. It's a little vague, right? Krishna says, surrender to me. But when he says me, he means his group, right? And so that ultimately is realized through surrender to the agent, to Sri Guru and Vaishnava, the agents of the Lord. And so that's mentioned in this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Gyane Prayasham Udapasyanamanta Eva. So that is how we are approaching the Lord, right? Through the devotees, ultimately. But it is a process, and whether initiated or not initiated, we may not be very far from each other in terms of our advancement. It's not a question of that. So we're in that process, the science of surrender, the science of Sharanagati. What does it mean? And for that reason, Srila Sridhar Maharaj has given us this wonderful book, right? Shri Shri Prapana Jivanamrita, where he's elaborately, discussing this point and going through, breaking it down, right? What are the different aspects of surrender? Surrender and humility, right? Embracing, accepting what is favorable, rejecting what is unfavorable to a life of surrender, actively in our daily lives, to have confidence in the Lord's protection over us, to embrace his guardianship over us in these different ways, and there are so many beautiful verses from the great saints, from the Shastra, which are illuminating the path of surrender, showing us what does it mean, how does it look like for one who is surrendered. What are the statements? They're like, Srila Sridhar Maharaj gives that very nice analogy, how the great messiahs, right, throughout the ages, they're like lighthouses in the ocean of faith, right? We're in a turbulent, dangerous ocean. There are so many sharks and perils along the way, but we have these lighthouses of faith to guide us, right? And so we can read those verses and feel humbled. Oh, I do not know what is surrender. we hear that one story, right? That Srila Sridhar Maharaj, I think it was in Jagannath Puri, Srila Sridhar Maharaj was walking with some of his godbrothers on the ocean, on the banks of the ocean in Puri. And so he was with some of his godbrothers, and there was also one gentleman, like a pious, educated gentleman, perhaps not like exactly a Vaishnava, but appreciated the Vaishnavas and scholarly in nature. And so that gentleman, he's walking with all these, dignified Vaishnavas, and he posed a question to them. He said, what does it really mean to surrender? He said, and he's looking all of them, and he said, if you tell me I can go and jump into this ocean right now, is that surrender? And all of these distinguished Vaishnavas in the group, they all looked to Srila Sridhar Maharaj. They all, Srila Sridhar Maharaj was universally honored by his godbrothers as, senior and most, had the greatest depth of understanding of the Siddhanta. So they all looked to him, honoring him, wanting to hear his answer. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he said, one who is truly Sharanagata could never speak like that, because rather they will say it is impossible, that I cannot surrender. So that just gives us a little indication, right? That just gives us a little clue. One who's really approaching that land of surrender, they will feel that, oh, I'm nowhere, right? I am nowhere. So that is one sign. And so we hear these things, these kinds of statements, and we think, oh, I have so far to go. I feel like honestly, I feel like the best that we can do is appreciate who are the real devotees, right? Honestly speaking, we're building sandcastles, right? And making mud pies. That's pretty much where we are, And the more that we can appreciate and recognize what is real Krishna consciousness, what is real surrender, and who really embodies that, where we can find some spark of that, or where we can find a full-fledged manifestation of that, the more we can just appreciate that and try and support that as much as we can, then the more we can make real progress, right? And so that begins with that honest admission that, oh, I'm at ground zero, And that's actually okay. Like, we don't need to be depressed about that. Like, why do we always have to compare ourselves, and expect ourselves to be like all these, if we do that, we're not really appreciating the depth of what this is, right? What does it mean if we think that there are light years between ourselves and where our gurus are? Like, really, there are light years of consciousness. And they're so merciful. They came and especially Srila Govinda Maharaj came and mixed with us like he's one of us. But he was not one of us, There are light years. I consider like that there are light years of consciousness. So I feel the best that I can do, at least, is to try and appreciate that. Read Prapana Jivanamrita and just cry at how beautiful it all is, And I'm not going to try and imitate that. I'm not going to say, oh, yes, I've surrendered and I have these feelings, and oh, I'm crying because I'm such a great devotee. No, I'm going to cry just because it's so beautiful. I don't have that, and I don't need to have that right now. But if I can just appreciate it, I'm so blessed, right? I'm here in planet human, dealing with calm, crowd, lobe, mode, right? Lust, anger, illusion, all these things. That's where I am right now. But if I can take some time in my day to appreciate, what the great devotees are thinking about and what kind of love they have for the Lord, that one moment's separation from Krishna, right? They're dying, The gopis are, well, we don't need to go that high, but they're condemning Lord Brahma, for creating blinking eyes, that obstruct. And see, there's danger here because then we can think we have that type. Oh, I'm going to see the deity of Krishna and I just want to stare at the deity. And oh, I'm sad I have to blink because then I can't see the deity. It's actually quite easy to self-delude ourselves, right? And I was very happy a few days ago, I saw one nice quote from Srila Swami Maharaj Prabhupada where he was saying that we should be careful in having darshan of the deity and of the pure devotee. And then he quoted that expression, familiarity breeds contempt, right? And that when the problem is we have these material senses, and as Saraswati Thakur says, our tendency is to turn everything we see into food for the senses, right? So we see the deity and we want to devour that as food for the eyes. But what is real transcendental vision? That is something else. So and I'm so grateful because Srila Govinda Maharaj and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, they've instilled this type of vision in us, to really try and understand where you are and where you're going, right? And what is the distance between Puja Laragapata Gaurava Bhange, right? This is the motto of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Puja Laragapata Gaurava Bhange. I'm doing puja to that higher plane. And I'm carefully watching myself, following the steps in my present stage, right? And I will honor that, what my gurus have and how high they are and how high this all is, right? I will honor that from my own position as a beginner. As Gurudev would say, and this is such a profound statement we can just think about for hours. When I go to Vrindavan, I'm not thinking about, oh, Krishna this and Radharani this and the gopis that, but I'm thinking, what were the pastimes of my gurus here? What was the appreciation of my gurus, right? Like Gurudev gives that analogy of the telescopic system, right? That we're looking at that high reality through so many lenses. What are those lenses? Those lenses are the hearts, the realization of our gurus. We're not directly approaching that and thinking we have some direct appreciation for that, right? But through the lens of the devotion of our gurus, we're looking at that, right? Oh, my Guru Maharaj saw like this, Bhakti Vinod Thakur saw like this, and this was their mood of devotion. This was their realization. This was their teaching. This was their caution. We're approaching in this very careful way. So, this is real approach to the real thing, right? And as I said, our gurus, we're very blessed because they've given us some idea of what it means to approach the real thing in the real way. And it's very easy for everything to become a mechanical exercise. It's very easy for everything to become an imaginary exercise, or mental concoction, and that caution is given in Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? Bahu Janme Kori Jari Shravan Kirtan. And then that one can be chanting the holy name lifetime after lifetime, but not get it because it's some exercise of the senses, right? So we have to hear all these things, and and be very careful about what is emotion, what is our imagination, what is the mind, and all these things, and really try and understand, where we are and where our gurus are, and what are the real signposts along the way, right? Like Srila Sridhar Maharaj, when he was asked that question, like, have you seen God, right? And Srila Sridhar Maharaj gave such a wonderful answer. He said, I will not be so audacious as to say that I have seen God, but I can say that I'm seeing some signs along the way, that I'm going in the right direction. Or I'm following the instructions, the teachings of my gurus, right? And I feel I'm seeing some signs along that I'm going in the right direction. And in that same talk, he also mentioned, he said that he said, I don't want a cheap marketplace Krishna. He said, I want the Krishna living in the heart of my guru, right? And to know that I am on the path of truth. He says, that is my satisfaction. He said, it does not matter how long it takes. It does not matter if it takes 1,000,000 lifetimes, 10 million lifetimes. But just to know that I am on the path of truth, that is my joy, right? That I have the highest truth of the Vastava Vastu, as it mentions in Bhagavatam, the real reality, the truthful truth, substantial reality. That is my joy, right? And whatever stage I am at, that's okay. I'm okay with that, right? Mukunda Datta, he's told, oh, after 10,000 lifetimes, you can come back and have my darshan. He's jumping for joy to hear that because he actually understands what it means, right? And how high this is, that if I have to wait 10,000 lifetimes, it's worth every second. Right? So to go back to what I was saying earlier, right? I feel just to be in a place of being able to appreciate what is genuine Krishna consciousness, just put ourselves out of the picture actually, and just appreciate the expressions, the mood of the pure devotees of the Lord. That's a wonderful place to be. That is Krishna consciousness. And we don't even need to think about where we are, because we're nowhere actually. We haven't really begun the real conversation. That's the truth. Like, we haven't actually begun the real conversation. We are practicing, and learning and hearing and praying and going on, right? And obviously there's some progress going on, but again, light years, right? Our gurus are light years in another dimension. Like, we can't really compare. So, oh, you're initiated and you're not initiated, I'm initiated. This all becomes quite meaningless, actually. Like, if you like zoom out and see, like, we're all, yeah, maybe like this one's like marginally ahead of that one, but we're all light years away. you know and where, Srila Sridhar Maharaj makes this interesting point, right? That there are some who they may be very successful in the early stages of practice, right? But later on, they struggle. And for others, it may be the opposite, that they don't do very well when they begin the practice. They struggle a lot, but then later on, they pick it up and they do very well. The student can become the teacher can become the student, right? And so we're all, more or less on the same platform. That was something I remember Sridhar Shalva Prabhu spoke with me about once, and it made a real impression on me. It is the truth. And we should understand, what is the position of our gurus? What is their realization? And really try and appreciate that and serve that, right? That's ultimately where we want to go. We want to serve that. We want to appreciate that, and we want to serve that. That's what we can do. Puja Laragapa to go to Vibhang. We're doing puja to that plane and those in that plane. We're not in that plane, but we worship, we love, we adore, we serve, we celebrate those who are in that plane. Nirmat saranam satam. This is the religion of non-enviousness. We don't have envy. We just want to honor who has a touch of that, and more who is living that. I'm remembering now one beautiful line of Srila Sridhar Maharaj where he says, how much earnestness must we have to search for a drop of Vaikuṇṭha nectar? How much earnestness to search after a drop of Vaikuṇṭha nectar. This is the kind of mood, that we want to have. That is to be properly situated. That we're earnestly searching after one drop of that substance and serving one drop of that divine substance and whoever has it. Well, we have another question here from Kirtida. Maybe we'll save that for next time. We have I have to go now for a program, actually, at the temple, so otherwise I would happily continue. So I'm gonna copy this question. And we can just gonna copy and paste. We'll discuss this next time. And welcome Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu, who's also joined us in the meeting. All right. Well, thank you for bringing up that topic, Ramananda. I think I might have gone different directions, but I hope your question was answered.
No, you're welcome. Yeah, thank you. No, it's all about sadhu sangha, it's discussion. Otherwise, that's why Gurudev said emotion or devotion. I see a lot of drama, everything. Yeah, I'm lucky just trying to hang around. I go different places. Yeah, I see. So then I realize what we have. So if we don't know what we have, what others have, then how we know how valuable it is? If there is 14 karat gold, there is 18 karat gold, there is 22 karat gold. So there is, yeah,
Yeah,
that's what we are taught. See,
yeah. No,
because
that
yeah,
is true.
we are, yeah, yeah.
That is true.
So that's why Param Guru Maharaj says, we are aspiring, Rupanugas. That's why Gurudev said, we are trying, we are trying. Gurudev knew how it's not easy. Yeah, I was lucky, had a lot of association with Gurudev. I didn't know, but I was able to connect with him somehow by his grace, by Krishna's grace. And I tried to my best to serve. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
it is
No, I appreciate. Thank you so much.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking from a very broad angle for sure, but
No,
sure,
no.
zooming in, yes, it is true. Even within our own
Yeah,
group, we are advised, right, that to try to see where is the gradation, right? And Rupa Goswami talks about this in
yeah,
Upadeshamrita. It's also discussed in Srimad Bhagavatam, right? That to try to identify as far as possible, um, what level of advancement different practitioners are and situate ourselves appropriately, right, in relationship to them. And Bhagavatam, in a like succinct way, it recommends this prema, maitri, kripa, upeksha, that we will try to develop love for the Lord, friendship for those who are more or less on the same level as ourselves, mercy, kripa, mercy for those who are less fortunate than ourselves, but somewhat more ignorant than ourselves. We will be merciful towards them, try to help them. And those who are against, those who are inimical, we will be indifferent, right? And then in Upadeshamrita, Rupa Goswami also discusses this in that verse, right? That this point about gradation amongst the practitioners and Vaishnavas, that for those who are I forget the Sanskrit, right? But it says, for one who has once said the name of Krishna, maybe someone here remembers the verse. I'm ashamed I don't remember the Sanskrit. That we will be respectful, right? We may not show so much physical or active respect, but we will mentally respect them, is what Rupa Goswami advises. We will mentally respect one who, may not be initiated, but they have some faith. They have chanted the name of Krishna. They have some degree of faith. We will have some respect for them. Then those who are more seriously engaged in practicing, we will have a deeper level of respect and try to serve and help them. And then that's right, Nindadi Shunya Hridam Ipsita Sangha Labdya. And then that Vaishnava who is fully realized, right? We will wholeheartedly give ourselves to them, right? Try to surrender to them in every way, thought, word, and deed. So yes, of course, it is true. But your question in the beginning, it was about, I think, how do we surrender, right? And yes, it for everyone at their stage, there will be different stages and levels of surrender, right? And that may, and in Srila Sridhar Maharshi discusses this in one place, right? In the beginning, the surrender may be on a more gross or physical level, right? For example, giving up bad habits, right? Giving up addictions or bad habits or bad association. In the beginning, that may be surrender and progress for us, right? On a more physical level. But as we progress, right? So maybe this is answering actually what your question was in the first place. So Sarva Dharmam Prityaja, right? Give up everything and come to me. That will mean something different, right? According to what stage of surrender we're at, right? So in the beginning, it will be this more physical expression of surrender, giving up these things that are not supporting our progress. But then as we develop, it will come to a more subtle plane, right? Different, different types of ego within ourselves. Pratishta, that is the most subtle and most difficult, right? Because we can give up everything, but then we can have some pride, some pratishta about that, right? And ultimately, surrender means to give ourself, to give our heart, right? Ultimately, one will get to that point of realizing that I haven't actually given anything up because it was all meaningless anyway. I gave up my attachment to this or that, but that attachment didn't mean anything. That attachment was like a shadow or a dream, right? I gave up that desire. I gave up these possessions, but those possessions weren't mine anyway, right? Like there's that beautiful case of that disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, Jagabandhu Bhakti Ranjan. He's honored on our Vaishnava calendar. He was a very wealthy Vaishnava, but very humble and completely surrendered. And there was that case when Saraswati Thakur, he'd sent out his disciples to collect money to be able to purchase a permanent place in Calcutta. They had a rented place for some years, but they ultimately wanted a permanent place. And so they were going out to collect. But then this one wealthy disciple, he heard and he said, oh, I will give everything. So he gave everything for the building of this temple, or purchase, I believe. or no, maybe they did, maybe just buying the plot of land first. Um, and Saraswati Thakur was so pleased by his service, and he actually, Saraswati Thakur himself personally composed a verse about him glorifying his devotion. Obviously it wasn't just that he gave the money, but he had a deep mood of devotion behind that. And so Saraswati Thakur actually composed something glorifying him. And that Jagabandhu, he wrote some reply to that and saying simply, I haven't done anything because I've simply given you what's yours. Right? So at one level of surrender, one may give their possessions for the cause of the Lord and feel, oh, I've made some sacrifice, I've done something, I gave up this, I broke my back for Prabhupada, you know. Or I could have I had a job offer at like the top firm and this or that, or I could have gone to the best university, but I gave it up, to join the mission. I sacrificed that, right? We can have these, or I had an acting career ahead of me, right? We may have these kinds of conceptions, right? Or I met the love of my life, and I gave it up. But then at a certain point, we'll realize that none of that actually had any meaning, actually. In the big picture of things. Yeah, that those things mean something here and now in this life, in this temporary, snapshot of reality that we're going through right now. But if we zoom out, understand, what does it mean? What is the true self? What's the overall trajectory of the soul within eternity? Those things don't mean anything, you know. What brilliant career or this or that or wealth or education, those things don't mean anything actually. So then you get to that point of surrender, realizing that there was nothing to give up. There was nothing to give up in the first place. So then there's another level of surrender, right? Of actually giving our heart, giving our soul, Atma Samarpan, right? That's the final limb of surrender that Srila Sridhar Maharaj discusses in Prapana Jivanamrita, giving of the self. And I wish I had a copy with me now, but in his introduction to that chapter, in the verse, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's describing this, right? That gives like an overview of these different stages of surrender, like first surrendering the body and paraphernalia, but ultimately the pure self, right? So, there's this amazing article Srila Sridhar Maharaj wrote. It's about Gadadhar Pandit, actually. It's quite a brilliant article. And he makes this very interesting point, saying that when we go to consider the value of sacrifice, we have to consider two things. Like, what is it that is being sacrificed, and who is the recipient of that sacrifice? Right? Then that will determine, how great is that sacrifice? Well, they're messaging me at the temple. I better. Okay, it's okay. And so he mentions all these examples, right, of because there are different examples given to encourage persons at different stages. So, one may say, oh, this person sacrificed all their wealth. Wow, that's inspiring. Some persons, this person sacrificed their body. Wow, this person sacrificed this, that, wow. But then at another level, it's, oh, well, I'm not this body. Money doesn't mean anything. Position doesn't mean anything. So what is actually the value of those sacrifices, right? So many things that we may consider to be so valuable at our human level, they all vanish into nothing. They dissolve into dust. You know, what is that poem Goswami Maharaj like to quote, that Ozymandias? It's describing like I can't remember it. Anyway, we don't need to get into all that now, but it's I think it's like someone who would like lived like some very glorious life, you know, but they end up like just like a statue in the desert, you know, and as an emblem. Or like Swami Maharaj Prabhupada, he made that joke about, I think it was like Napoleon, you know, birds pooping on his statue, you know, like in the end, like, you know, no offense, but like what was the value of all of that in the sum total of things, right? So you know, again, right, surrender, it will mean something different, right, at every stage that we are at. And so we all have to, you know, I really like one expression of Srila Gurudev once where he said we should be conscious of from where we have come, where we are, and where we are going, right? Where we've come from, where we are at present, and where we are going, right? We all have a particular narrative within our development, right? And that may be something deeply personal or only known to one or two others, or it may just be between us and Krishna and our guru, right? But we all have our own line of progress, you know, that we are on, and we have to keep awareness of that, right? Cannot lose the plot of our own movie, you know. What's the genre, you know, and what's the narrative, and you know, we can't lose track of that, right? So yes, we are all at different stages of surrender, and we're not going to sit here and compare, oh, who's more surrendered than the other, you know, but we can all look to ourselves and try to understand, you know, where we came from, where we are, and where we're going, right? And to continue that thread, not to lose that thread. And it may just be a little thread of awareness and clarity of what is our path of progress, but we will hold on to that, right? And that will be something different for everyone according to their stage of progress. So yes, it is true, Prabhu. I'm going to stop there. Thank you all for hearing me out. It's always so wonderful to gather with you all here. Jai Shri Bhakti Sundar Govinda Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Dev Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Bhagavan Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai, Shri A.C. Bhakti Siddhanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. All the assembled devotees ki Jai, the sincere seekers ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Jai Gaur Premanande, Haribol. See you all next
Dandava
time.
Shishakari ji. Thank you so much.
Dandavad, Dandavad. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you, everyone.